person you're becoming is watching every decision you make today. The stranger at table 7. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. The rain had just stopped. The streets still glistened beneath the early sunlight. 34-year-old Jonathan stepped into a small cafe he had visited every week for years. He ordered the same coffee, sat at the same corner table, opened the same notebook, and stared at another blank page. For months, he had been writing the same sentence. I'll start tomorrow. Start the business. Start exercising. Start writing the book. Start becoming the man he knew he could be. Tomorrow had become his favorite lie. As Jonathan reached for his coffee, the waitress smiled. I'm sorry, sir. Someone is sitting at your usual table. Jonathan looked across the room. A man sat there quietly, about his age, well-dressed, calm, confident. A notebook rested beside a worn Bible. A wedding ring reflected the morning light. He looked strangely familiar. The stranger looked up and smiled. You can join me. Jonathan hesitated. I think you're sitting in my seat. The man nodded. I know. I've been waiting for you. Jonathan frowned. Do we know each other? The stranger looked into his eyes. Not yet, but we will. Confused, Jonathan sat down. The stranger stirred his coffee before speaking. I am the person you're becoming. Jonathan laughed nervously. This is a joke. The man simply smiled. No, it's a warning. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the stranger pointed to Jonathan's notebook. Every decision you make today writes another page in my life. Jonathan looked down at the blank page. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt expensive. Every small decision has a witness. The stranger opened his notebook. Every page contained a date. Every page described one ordinary decision. The day Jonathan chose sleep instead of discipline. The afternoon, he stayed silent instead of speaking up. The evening, he watched television instead of reading. The weekend, he postponed visiting his parents. The stranger smiled sadly. You think these moments disappear. They don't. They become me. Jonathan shook his head. They're too small to matter. The stranger reached into his pocket and placed a tiny acorn on the table. This doesn't look like a forest, but give it enough time, and you'll never remember when it stopped being a seed. He continued. Every habit begins this way. Every addiction. Every success, every regret. No life changes in one dramatic day. It changes because thousands of ordinary decisions quietly agree with each other. Jonathan looked around the cafe. Everyone seemed busy. Phones, conversations, coffee. Nobody noticed the conversation taking place. Yet it felt more important than any meeting Jonathan had ever attended. The stranger leaned forward. Every choice has a witness. Me. The road that split without a sign. After breakfast, the stranger invited Jonathan for a walk. They reached an old hiking trail that divided into two narrow paths. One path was smooth, bright, easy. The other climbed sharply through thick trees. Jonathan smiled. The easy road looks better. The stranger nodded. It always does. Then he pointed toward the smooth road. People who choose this path rarely notice when they're drifting. They only notice years later. Jonathan looked toward the difficult trail. It seems harder. It is. But it leads somewhere. As they walked uphill, Jonathan became tired. He complained. The stranger never slowed down. Halfway to the top, Jonathan wanted to quit. The stranger asked only one question. Who are you training? Jonathan frowned. My body? The stranger shook his head. No, your identity. Every difficult decision was teaching Jonathan something. Not merely how to endure discomfort, but how to become someone who no longer feared it. When they reached the summit, Jonathan looked back. The easy road had disappeared into thick fog. The difficult road revealed an extraordinary view. The stranger smiled. The best views rarely belong to people who stayed comfortable. The library of unlived lives. That evening they entered an enormous old library. Shelves stretched endlessly. Every book carried Jonathan's name. Confused, he reached for one. Inside was a story. The life of Jonathan, who started exercising. Another book. Jonathan, who wrote his novel. Another. Jonathan, who forgave his brother. Another. Jonathan, who built a company. Thousands of books. Thousands of possible lives. Jonathan whispered. Which one becomes real? The stranger quietly replied. The one your decisions choose. Then he pulled down a dusty book. Its pages were almost blank. What is this? The life where you kept waiting. Jonathan turned every page. Nothing happened. No adventures. No courage. No growth. Only endless tomorrows. He closed the book with trembling hands. I don't want this one. The stranger nodded, then stopped writing it. The storm that revealed character. Months passed. Jonathan never saw the stranger again, but every morning he remembered the conversation. Slowly, his routines changed. Morning walks, reading, prayer, journaling, learning, serving others, keeping promises. Then life became difficult. His company downsized. His savings shrank. His father became seriously ill. Everything seemed to fall apart. Old Jonathan would have panicked. This Jonathan remained steady, not because life became easier, because his identity had changed. One evening, while sitting beside his father's hospital bed, he remembered something the stranger had said. The strongest version of you isn't created during peaceful seasons. He is revealed during storms. Suddenly, Jonathan understood. Character isn't built when life is comfortable. It is tested there and revealed when comfort disappears. 20 years later, 20 years passed. Jonathan had become everything he once admired. Not famous, not perfect, but faithful, healthy, generous, wise. His grandchildren loved listening to his stories. One afternoon, his oldest grandson asked, "Grandpa, when did your life change?" Jonathan smiled. It happened in a coffee shop. The boy looked confused. "What happened?" Jonathan pointed toward a mirror hanging on the wall. "I met someone." "Who?" "The man I was becoming." The grandson laughed. "That's impossible." Jonathan smiled. "So I thought." He walked toward the mirror. "Every morning, I still imagine he's watching. It reminds me that every decision creates tomorrow's character." The grandson stared into the mirror. Perhaps one day, he would remember those words, just as Jonathan had. The person waiting in tomorrow. Imagine tomorrow morning. You wake up. Nothing has changed. The same house. The same responsibilities. The same unfinished dreams. The same opportunities. The same fears. Then, as you stand before the mirror, someone appears behind your reflection. Not a stranger. Not a ghost. You. Older. Wiser. Calmer. Stronger. The person you could become. They don't criticize you. They don't shame you. They simply ask, "What decision are you making today?" Because they already know something you don't. Your future isn't built someday. It is built sentence by sentence, choice by choice, morning by morning, promise by promise. Every glass of water instead of another excuse. Every page read instead of another distraction. Every difficult conversation instead of another silence. Every workout instead of another delay. Every act of kindness instead of another selfish impulse. Every honest decision instead of another shortcut. The person you dream of becoming isn't waiting for better circumstances. They're waiting for better decisions. And every single one begins today. One day, people will admire your confidence, your peace, your discipline, your wisdom, your impact. They'll ask, "How did you become this person?" The answer won't be dramatic. You'll simply smile and say, "I stopped making decisions that disappointed my future self." If this message challenged the way you think, subscribe to The Legacy Mind, where every conversation is designed to help you think deeper, live wiser, and become more. Remember this, the future isn't watching from a distance. It's being created by every decision you make today. The person you're becoming is real, live today in a way that makes them proud to become you.